So you're thinking about moving to Chicago, Illinois, but you don't actually want to live in Chicago? Well, I'm here to say do not move to Chicago. You just want to experience summertime chai. All the culture, the festivals, the air show, Taste of Chicago, concerts at Wrigley Field maybe, baseball games, football games, all the fireworks. Well, you can do all that without actually living in Chicago. More and more people have been moving to the suburbs, especially closer to the Wisconsin border. And let me tell you, I'm one of them, and I have no regrets. You know what I'm saying? I'm Megan, your Northern Illinois realtor, and I help people buy and sell homes all across Northern Illinois. Plus, I like to give you all the inside scoop on what's happening in Northern Illinois. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. That way you get notified anytime there's a new video out. Chicago versus the suburbs, let's get to it. First and foremost, just the overall cost of living. You can expect to pay so much more when living in Chicago, just from the overall standpoint of just housing, taxes, etc., etc. Everything just costs more out in Chicago. Plus, you have all the fun, events and everything. Everything's got a cost to it. So, yes, you might want to experience summertime chai, but everything's, there's going to be a lot that does cost money to be able to experience, as well as just your typical living expenses. Whereas the farther out into the suburbs that you get, the overall cost of living definitely decreases a little bit, especially if you're staying in Illinois. So, the outer suburbs of, Northern Cook County, Southern Lake County tend to be, a little bit better priced. Property taxes can still be high. Overall jobs though, there's a ton of jobs, suburbs and the city. And the city might have jobs that pay a little bit more. If you really want to travel to the city and live in the suburbs, you totally can. But there are plenty of excellent paying jobs out in the suburbs that you can live somewhere more affordable and get a really great paying jobs out in the suburbs. Or like I said, if you choose to travel, take the metro, drive, just whatever commute you want into the city, you can still work into the city. Taxes. The city of Chicago has so many taxes, not just, your property taxes. There might be, entertainment and grocery bag, and there's just all these other taxes, of course, higher sales tax. And then you also have, potential like parking taxes, and, it just depends on how you're living and what you're doing in the city. It really all adds up. Whereas when you come out to the suburbs, yeah, there's still, every city's a little bit different. Everyone's got their taxes and everything, but overall it is less expensive to live out into these suburbs. Taxes, especially the property taxes, even when you are living out closer to the Wisconsin border versus some of the closer suburbs to Chicago, the property taxes that you are paying for a house that's say on an acre and quite a bit larger of a home is going to be about the same as those even in the suburbs where you're on a smaller lot. Maybe the home is a little around the same size or a little bit smaller. So you just get so much more home for your money just in terms of taxes alone. I'm not going to talk about the differences in schools. All the schools have their different rankings, and that's for your own thing to look up and figure out where you want to go. But if you figured out what school districts you want to go, comparatively, you got Chicago, and some of the suburbs are going to be super, super dense. Anything closer to Chicago, very, very dense. You get out closer into the farther suburbs, like I said, closer to the Wisconsin border, especially northern area, you get, schools that you might have a little bit smaller classroom sizes, a little bit more breathing room for your children. Maybe they can get some more, one-on-one attention if the classes are smaller. Depends on how small of a town you want to go and live in, because there are some small towns that, really the schools are not very big at all. So especially when you get out into like Spring Grove and like Hebron, just these areas that just the schools are so much smaller. It really depends on what you feel like your children need and they'll thrive in. And depending on sports too, right? Size of school, look at what sports your kids might be interested in, figure that out for yourself. But schools vary drastically, but the biggest difference is going to be the denseness, really and truly. and then the quality is for yours to look up. And the traffic. Of course, the traffic, getting into the city is not fun. Getting out of the city is not fun either. It really depends on the time of the day, which areas are worse. But there's still traffic out in the suburbs, especially if you're traveling into, some of like the busier areas, go to Vernon Hills, Libertyville, Northbrook, kind of go towards 94. You're always going to have a little bit of that traffic, but it's nothing compared to what you're experiencing in the city of Chicago. And when you get a little bit closer to the city where you just kind of have these moments of standstill constantly, you do not always have that out in the suburbs. You might have a little bit slower of a commute, but at least you are moving, or you have options in different directions that you can potentially go. So the traffic is much less different. You have a lot more options, a lot more routes you can potentially take home with varying other streets. And it's just a little bit easier way of life in terms of traffic. Parking nightmares. So obviously if you're in the city, you may not have your own designated parking spot, or there might not be parking places appropriately for various businesses or whatever. And it's a real pain in the butt, right? It's a pain in the butt to constantly be worrying about your vehicle or moving your vehicle. Whereas when you come out here, you have a nice driveway. Potentially it's a very long driveway. Maybe it fits 8 cars, the bigger the lots get, the more room there is for you to park, or even parking on the roads a lot easier, or businesses have bigger parking lots. Parking is just drastically different from the two. The hustle and bustle life, or the coming home to a more relaxed, peaceful life. So I like to think of this as, do you want to come home and hear a lot of noises, or do you want to come home and be able to just relax and maybe go outside, enjoy nature? There's very different environments for the city, and obviously you can come out into the suburbs. The suburbs also offers a ton of forest preserves. If you don't live in the country, most of the suburban towns that are a little bit more dense have an immense amount of forest preserves, so you can still get out into the country and get that relaxed, peaceful, go fishing, do what you want to do. And of course, further out you can actually get some land. I mean, not just an acre. You have actual subdivisions where every bit of land is you get acre lots, 1 acre, whole acre, decent size home, 4 or 5 bedroom homes, 2.5, 3 bath homes, whatever. There's so many options the farther out you go for a better price. And you can just relax. You can have that time on the evenings or the weekends where you just go outside and you're not hearing constant traffic or sirens, or dare I say smelling like skunks, because when you get in the city, those animals still exist out there and they get hit, they get ran over, they live in retention pond areas, and a lot of times you smell them kind of all the time. And that was like one of the drawbacks for me personally when living out in the suburbs. You come out to the country where these animals, actually live, but they don't hang around your house. They have plenty of green space to go and hang out. So they're not out very much. I've lived farther out into the suburbs for the past, 3 years now. I'm originally from out more this way, but for the past 3 years, I think I've smelled a skunk like 3 times, literally the entire time. Whereas before, I couldn't go a day without smelling skunk. Is that what you want to be kind of dealing with, living with all the sound, or do you want to come back and be able to hear like the birds chirping, see the greenery, see the trees moving in the wind, things to do outside? So now obviously Chicago has, you have a lot of people that bike and run, and of course you walk everywhere anyways, if you don't have a car. And there's obviously going to be places, sports places to go, pickleball and gym, all sorts of buildings, different sports. But when you come out further into the suburbs, you have all that within forest preserves, and of course all the various cities' recreation departments, and so many opportunities to still do all the things for your kids, the sports, t-ball, soccer, plus your own hobbies, the fishing, the boating. You have the chain of lakes, up farther north in Chicago, and it's a bunch of lakes that you can go and you can boat on. You're not far from Wisconsin. You can go to Lake Geneva, a great lake over there, great beaches, very nice water, just nice lake water. Sometimes people at the chain of lakes don't really like the water there, Lake Geneva is a little bit more on the greener side of water. It's very, very natural lake water, and it's very, very nice. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to a busy beach on Lake Michigan, or do you want to go to a less busy beach in Lake Geneva or in Chain of Lakes, or go boating on the Chain of Lakes? You know, it's really up to you. Like I said, the cost of living is a little bit less expensive out into the country, you know, out farther into the suburbs. So you might be able to afford that certain boat that you actually want, or versus what you might take out on Lake Michigan. And of course, I just want to touch on pets. If you are a pet lover, a dog lover, I get it that, you know, you totally can have pets in Chicago, and there's enough, like, you know, designated areas for the pet. But really and truly, there's nothing like having this like acre lot, half-acre lot, somewhere where these dogs can run all the time, every day, get their energy out. If you're a dog person, of course. Now, if you're a cat person, obviously that's different. Although, of course, you can take your cat out or whatever, or let your cat out. People do all the time out here, especially if they come back, or take your cat out on a leash. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. And the big one is the Chicago Bears are still heavily looking at Arlington Heights to move their stadium to. So Arlington Heights is part of the northern Cook County suburbs. It's a decent drive away from their actual city of Chicago, and a good distance away from their actual stadium that they've got now. With that, Chicago Bears actually build their stadium in Arlington Heights, which is it's a go still as of right now. That's going to bring a ton of jobs in the coming years, and home value increases, and just overall economic growth for the suburban areas. Because even some of these places that are, say, 30 minutes from the stadium that are quite country, they're absolutely going to see their home values go up. Because if people want to be a little bit closer to the stadium but not have to, you know, pay to live in Arlington Heights or whatever, they're 100% going to be choosing these places that are only 30 minutes away. So I just foresee so much growth in this northern Illinois suburban area, and cross our fingers that the Bears do come to Arlington Heights, because that would just drive, I think, so much to the suburbs and for those that live here already, and which is why I think you should be looking to buy in the suburbs soon, so that you can see some of that equity growth in your own home over the coming years. So if you've been thinking of moving to Chicago or the suburbs, definitely let me know your thoughts. What do you love or hate about Chicago? Comment on the video, and I'd love to hear more.